All right, the road to release continues, and it's a big countdown right now because we're waiting for the next installment of Out of the Park 26, OOTP 26, whatever you want to call it. We've got Rich Grisham, president of Out of the Park Developments, with us right now. What a great number! More than a quarter century. How excited are you to get this new baby out to the world?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about a 48 right now.
It's a
Just
high number.
really, really excited.
And we're going to be laying out kind of the framework for the history of Out of the Park, because I think in a lot of situations like this, to take the step forward, we need to take a step back. But I know a lot of people are watching and listening right now with bated breath to hear about, okay, what are the features for Out of the Park 26? Tell me a little bit. And of course, we're going to be going through that in Road to Release. But you, as a fan and somebody who's behind the scenes, a big supporter of this, a big driving force behind this, what has you excited about this new installment, 26?
Oh man, there's so much, but I think, if I have to pick one or two things, I'm I guess I'm going to have to go with the things that I sort of had the most involvement in. And I say that with sort of an asterisk, involvement, because one of the many things that I've learned over the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years in working it out of the park is that there's some things that I'm good at, and there's some things that I need to sort of let the other people do. And one of the things that I really know to let the other people do is game design. So I don't want to indicate or intimate that in any way I'm sort of influential on the actual game design and the execution. But I will tell you that one thing that I'm really excited about, because I was able to work with our partners at Major League Baseball to help bring, is something that we've wanted to have in Out of the Park Baseball ever since it existed. And that this year is the World Baseball Classic. Uh, we've never had the World Baseball Classic in Out of the Park Baseball. We've always wanted it. And all credit to our great partners at Major League Baseball. We were able to make it happen. And it's not only just this year having the World Baseball Classic qualifiers, but it's also into next year when the World Baseball Classic, finals or proper, whatever you want to call it, happens. Like, that is a really big deal for us. In the world of the park baseball, we really try to deliver the most authentic possible experience that a person can have. And when you have the real World Baseball Classic with the real nations and the real rosters and the real logos and the real marks, it adds another level of authenticity that really just we're very proud of. So I'm personally really, really excited about that. And then I will also say, and I'm not going to give any details away, but once again, heading into a new year, we have several really, really exciting legends that have never had their photographs in the game in Perfect Team. And we've got some really exciting new legends that will make their way into Perfect Team that will make some people's eyes go, whoa, wow. We never saw him before. We never saw this player before. And they are they are representing several different eras of the incredible history of Major League Baseball. So those are two things that I personally have been involved in bringing into the game. And then the best part is then once they're there, then I'm able to sort of let the game designers, and the content designers do their thing. And I'm just as surprised as everybody else is when the content gets released and how it gets released, which is a really fun thing. So those are two things that I'm really excited about. And there's a lot more. But those are two things I'm definitely excited about because I had a little something to do with them making their way into.
When you bring in these legends that we're talking about, you're bringing that information, you're telling your team behind the scenes, look, these players, these legends, I should say, are going to be in the game in Perfect Team and Out of the Park. What was their reaction when you told them those names?
Very excited. A lot of let's goes, a lot of oh yes, a lot of oh man, I can't believe it, right? Like, some of the names are going to be people that I honestly never really thought that we'd be able to make happen. And just some real excitement. I mean, look, Perfect Team is awesome. The cards are incredible. The missions, the perfect drafts, the tournaments, it's all, this wonderful potpourri of baseball explosions just happening everywhere, every era, every kind of player. It's its whole thing. But when you're able to then pepper in even more of those legendary players, those Hall of Famers, those those players who have a very special place in the world of baseball, and you're able to bring them to life with their faces and their action shots, and it's just it's so fun and so exciting. And I know our fans love it because they tell us all the time. um, so it's just especially when you juxtapose it to where we were 3 4 5 years ago when we didn't have any, right? And so it's just everyone gets really excited, and there's a really special feeling, when I'm able to talk to Nicolino and talk to Paul and be like, we signed this player. Is there something really fun that we know that we can do with them? And I never finished the sentence before they're like, oh, of course there is. Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's just, it's really exciting, and it's unique, and it's the kind of thing that just gets everybody really excited.
So, speaking of legends, let's shift gears a little bit because there is a legend that's been a part of Out of the Park baseball since the start, and we're talking about Marcus Heinsohn. And now
Mhm.
Out of the Park begins a new season, if you will, in its glorious history. With Marcus now moving on, what's
Mhm.
the direction of Out of the Park moving forward?
Well, there's no replacing Marcus, right? It's not as if like, okay, well, Marcus is leaving. Let's go have this person fill that role. Like Marcus literally is Out of the Park baseball and will always be Out of the Park baseball. His fingerprints, his DNA will course through this game for its entire history. And so when we as a team were able to process the fact that Marcus was taking a different direction in his career, we had to sort of step back and think, okay, how do we want to do this and how do we want to approach it? And while everyone on the team was obviously very sad to see Marcus go, um, we also know that he has put us in the best possible position to continue to deliver the out of the park baseball experience that our fans have. There are very few, if any, video game franchises that are out there that have such a direct tie to a single human being, right? Like Marcus has been the leader and the guy, who's not just a leader, right? Like not a leader who's sitting in an office somewhere, sending off emails and things like that. The guy who literally wrote the game, wrote the code that makes the game work, and added all the features and all that. Like it's just it's an amazing thing what he's been able to do, but he's also put us in an incredible position, not just from a technology perspective, but also from a relationship perspective. All the relationships that I've developed with people at Major League Baseball and the Players Association and Valve and the Alumni Association and all the different partners that we have, that all started with him. Um, and so but we've also been working with him for a long time, and he's really like his vision, his you know guardrails, his key points, his priorities. They've been drilled into us for a long time. Like everyone on the team has been working with Marcus for between 3 years and 15 years, right? So we've learned a lot from him, and we are just going to continue to do everything that we can to ensure the out of the park baseball game is faithful to what it always has been, and faithful to our fans, many of who have been with us for 25, 26 years. Um, and so he's really done an incredible job. I mean, if he was going to leave, which nobody wanted him to leave, but if he was going to leave, he certainly chose to do so at a time where he gave us everything that he possibly could to continue to deliver the best possible game that we could deliver using it. So, we are laser focused on making sure that out of the park baseball continues to be the most authentic Major League Baseball experience possible, that it continues to have an extraordinary amount of ways for people to play on their own in the franchise modes and the custom leagues and the online leagues, as well as the online multiplayer perfect team component. Like, these two different parts of the game are what make up out of the park now, and we just want to do everything we can so that every single year when people buy the game, that they know that they're getting more than they could possibly get, more than they could possibly experience, right? If you play 1,000 hours of out of the park baseball, like some of us, you and me, do, we still know there's a lot of things out there that we haven't touched, and yet other people spend a lot of time in those areas, right? Like, so we just want to make sure that we are laser focused on baseball, 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 right? Like, the nice thing about out of the park baseball is we know what it is, right? It is a Major League Baseball experience, and we're going to just continue to pour our hearts and souls into making it the best, most authentic, biggest baseball game anybody could possibly want.
It's wild, Rich, when you're talking about kind of like that history and keeping the core tenets of the game that Marcus started a quarter century ago. You take a step back and you think about video game, sports game history. And people, it's one thing that we love to talk about on Twitch, on YouTube, on Reddit, all of these things, comments about favorite sports video games of all time. And you go back to, like, I'm gonna mention a few, but like Earl Weaver Baseball, Baseball Mogul, Tony La Russa Baseball, Baseball Stars on Nintendo, all of these games. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And then, but those games are all in the past. That's the wild thing to me, is those all had like a very important part in video game history for sports. But with all due respect, they had their moment and then they disappeared. How does Out of the Park continue to stay relevant and continue to kind of raise the bar year after year so people keep supporting this? But then by the same token, Out of the Park Developments is supporting the community and what they want.
There's a lot of potential answers to that question, but the core answer is the fans. Period. The people who play the game. We're out of the park baseball is never going to be in the top 10, of the highest selling games every year. It's not going to break through to become like a Fortnite or a Minecraft, right? Like, but there is absolutely positively this incredible core group of thousands of people who challenge us, who talk to us, um, who just continually give us everything that we need to make the best game that we can. I mean, the video game industry in 2025, as we sit here and talk to you, is going through incredible challenges. And there are no guarantees in this business, right? Like, and we understand that. We embrace that, right? Like, we know that we are incredibly blessed to be able to make this game. But the only way that the game comes out this year and next year and the year after that is if the fans love it. And I don't mean, like, I use the word love for a reason, right? In the world that we're in right now, if you make a product if unless your product is great, I don't feel like you have a chance to be successful. Even if it is great, that doesn't guarantee success. But you have to start at great if you're going to be successful in the world, because people are very smart. People know value. They know what value means to themselves. They know if the things that they buy, whether they be video games or if the television programs they watch or the movies they watch or the sports that they watch, like if it's not giving them value, they're going to very quickly move on to something that is. So the reason what let's just keep going is our fans, our community. I talk about it all the time, but it is the best community in video games. Many of them have been with us for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I feel like our community, I feel like we engage with our community more than any other gaming studio out there. I could be wrong. I I don't spend a lot of time in other video game communities because I don't have the capacity to do so. But I don't know of any other games where we have such direct interaction with our fans on a regular basis. And we listen. And while we will never delight everybody, and we obviously we're human beings. We make mistakes. Sometimes there's a bug. Sometimes things happen. But show me a video game that doesn't have something like that happen sometimes. Like we're all human beings. Um, I feel like we are more in touch with our fans than we've ever been. Um, I feel like the things that we do. Well, I don't feel like I know the things that we do come from the community, the new features, not just the big features like the World Baseball Classic or the Player Development Lab, like even the small things. When we make updates and upgrades to how scouting works, or when we add a couple of new playoff formats thanks to the KBO, for example, right? There's all sorts of big things and little things that we do, but it all ultimately comes from our fans. And so, again, without the community, we have nothing. And the community is really smart. They all know the game better than I do. And they know the game inside and out and every aspect of the game. And we just get such amazing feedback and incredible conversations with our fans. We can't afford to release a stinker because everybody would know right away, and that would be that, right? Like we have to be great. And I'm not saying we have to be great, like pat myself on the arm, we're so great. No, I mean, the product has to speak for itself. And one of the things that I'm very proud of, especially over the last few years, the product has been really just really well received by both the public, right? Like if you look at the Steam reviews, they're overwhelmingly positive. Like that's really hard to be overwhelmingly positive on Steam. And as well as our engagement. There are more people playing Out of the Park Baseball 25 right now than there were when it came out, which is extraordinary. How is that possible? But yet there it is, right? And it's just we owe our fans everything. And I cannot express my gratitude to our fans enough because they are the reason that we're able to do this. And it's not blowing smoke. Like it's literally true. When you're a game like ours, right? And you measure your fans in the tens and hundreds of thousands, not in the tens of millions, right? Like how much each and every customer means. And we live and breathe like understanding how will this impact our customers? Is this what they want, right? We can't deliver everything everybody wants because we only have so much capacity, but darn it if we aren't going to just, continue to do the best thing that we can. And it's sort of it's a paradox, right? Like how much can you possibly add to a baseball game, right? Like you can't add wrestling or car racing. So, on one hand, you're like, well, there's only so much I can do. But on the other hand, in the world of baseball, and there are so many nooks and crannies of the sport, and it does evolve and change over time, there's almost a limitless supply of things that you can do to the game to make it better, to make it more true to the game now and or adjusted to the game in the past. So our fans are incredible. I am thankful for them, and we do not take it for granted because if we did take it for granted, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. Right? There's no law that says there must be an out of the park baseball game. We are here only because of the fans, and we know that if we don't delight them, And I don't use that word lightly. We have to delight our fans, because if we don't, there's a lot of other things that they could spend their time and their money doing. And we own that, we recognize it, and we live and breathe just asking ourselves, how can we make this game better? Will this delight our fans? And we try our best to make sure that the answer to that question is yes.
Well, I think a lot of probably eagle-eyed, at least those who are watching our video right now, eagle-eyed, they've probably noticed at one point the merchandise you're wearing. There's a very prominent
Yeah.
logo on there, National Baseball Hall of Fame, and
Yeah.
that's an important partnership between Major League Baseball, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and Out of the Park Baseball. And real quick, Rich, I want to play this video that you've shared from your visit to Cooperstown. Have a look.
If you had ever told me that one day I would be standing by myself after hours alone in the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, I would have said, that's impossible. But it happened. And it's happening right now. And it's one of the greatest, coolest moments in my life.
All right. So, I mean, first of all, goosebumps when you play that video. What was that moment? We'll get to why you were there, what you were doing there, but just take us through that moment that you had the place all to yourself, right?
Yeah, it was not planned. I didn't expect it to happen. I was just merely walking from one part of the Hall of Fame after it had closed, because we had a film crew there doing some stuff. And I was sitting in one part of the Hall of Fame. I was like, oh, I need to get to this other part. And I happened to walk into the plaque room, and I looked around and I realized I was the only person in there. And
Wow.
I had a moment, right? I just looked around, and it's hard to describe it. It was surreal. It was humbling, and it was awe-inspiring all at the same time, because when you think of not just the plaques, right, but when you think of the people who have walked through that hall, right, not every person on the plaque has been in that hall, because some of them, had passed away long before they got in, but a whole lot of them had.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, like, wow, Derek Jeter has been here, and Dave Winfield has been here, and Ozzie Smith has been here, and at one point, I'm sure Mickey Mantle was here, and Gary Carter was here, and hopefully Satchel Paige was here. Like, you just go on and on. Like, Sandy Koufax was here. Ichiro was just here. Like, I saw, like, one of the cool things, which I didn't know, is when the time between when the player is elected to the Hall of Fame and when they're inducted, in the plaque room, they have the spot where their plaque is going to be, and then they just have signatures, right? So there was the signature of Ichiro and of CC Sabathia and of Billy Wagner, right? And I wasn't overcome, but I was struck. And then at that moment, it's like, well, it's 2025. I gotta film myself, right?
Got to capture the moment.
You got to do it, right? Like, that's just the world that we're in. So I just picked up my phone and took that video that you just saw there, and the whole moment lasted about 10 minutes, right? And some of the time I was just looking at a couple of the plaques and thinking about what it meant. And a couple of times I was just looking up at the ceiling and around the room. And then one of those minutes I was taking that video. But it all boiled down to, like, it was not that long ago where I could not have even envisioned a moment like that happening. So to be, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 years ago, being some guy who worked in a completely different industry and a completely different thing, different world, right? To now suddenly be in a position where, by happenstance, I happen to be standing in the National Baseball Hall of Fame plaque room by myself after hours it was a moment, man. And it was an incredible, incredible feeling.
And your job, your workplace may have changed, but the fact that you've always been a baseball fan, that makes it even more amazing. And that kind of brings us to this portion of the interview, is that one of the parameters of your job is building relationships, building partnerships between, specifically for our interview, Out of the Park Baseball, and between Major League Baseball and players and teams and all of that. And that, I know it's business first. I know in the industry that it is, you have a job to do, but it also affords some pretty cool opportunities. What is that like, the access? Because you're going to spring training, you're there for photo shoots, videos, and meeting players. You're up close and personal. What is that experience like for the people out there who could only dream of being that close to a baseball player? These are heroes to many people. These are,
Oh, yeah.
you grew up, they were heroes to you. What is that like, being behind the scenes and kind of being part of this very special thing?
Well, it depends on the scenarios, right? So, for example, when I'm at spring training, I'm hyperventilating the entire time. And that is because part of my responsibilities are to make sure those legends get to that place at that moment, right? And so, if those legends don't get to that place at that moment, there's a whole lot of things that will fall apart, right? So, at certain times, like at spring training, I'm so focused on making sure we get the guys where they need to be, and I'm texting with their agents and making phone calls, and and there's film crews and stuff just sitting there waiting, looking at me like, all right, where's the guys, Rich? So those are. It's really hard to sort of in the moment be like, oh man, this is really cool, because you're so focused on making sure this incredibly important thing takes place. However, I will say that there was a point last year where I was sitting in a dugout while one of the trailers was being filmed, and I was just sitting in the dugout of this baseball field, and then Mike Trout walks over and sits down on the dugout bench about 7 or 8 feet from me, and then Ken Griffey Jr. does the same thing a minute later, and those two were just sitting on the bench in the dugout, the same bench in the same dugout that I am, and they're just chatting, and I'm like,
Yeah.
cannot believe this is happening here, right? But then one of the other, where in a situation where it's less stressful, where I've had the moments is again, thanks to the great people at Major League Baseball and the Players Association, I've been able to attend the MLB All-Star Game for the last few years, and there have been a couple of times where I have been sitting. Like one time, I sat next to Ferguson Jenkins and talked to him for 30 minutes. Fergie and me just talking, like. And I'm such a baseball geek. Like, I have no problem filling 30 minutes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm asking Ferguson Jenkins, so Mr. Jenkins, you pitched like complete games all the time. You won, hundreds and hundreds of games. You would throw 7, 8, 9 innings without thinking about it. What's your take on why guys only throw 4, 5, and 6 innings at the most? And listening to him talk for 5 minutes about that, that was a moment where I was just like, okay, this is amazing, because I was just talking to him like he was just a normal person, right? It wasn't on a pedestal. He wasn't 50 feet away in a microphone. We were just sitting there together talking, and it was purely by chance. Another moment that was, I think, again, just an amazing moment. So Ryan Howard, the huge hulking first baseman for the Phillies for a bunch of years. I remember when, and this is before I was even working even micro, transactionally with Out of the Park. So this is before I had anything to do with Major League Baseball at all. I went to a Phillies Yankees game at Citizens Bank Park, and it was, I don't know exactly what year it was. I could look it up. It was relatively early in Ryan Howard's career, and we were sitting in the right field, like the second deck. And Ryan Howard comes up to bat, and the guy next to me is like, "You think he could hit it up here?" I'm like, "Nah, this is nobody can hit it all the way up here. We're way too far." Not that at bat, but the next at bat, he came up and he not only hit it to us, he hit it over our heads, like into the upper deck. And I was like, I was like, well, that shows you what I know, right? At this past All-Star game, I happened to be in a room where he was, and I said, okay, I'm just gonna take the chance. And I walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Howard, you have 20 seconds for me to just tell you a really great story." And him being the nice guy that he is, he laughed and smiled, and I got to tell Ryan Howard my Ryan Howard story. And if that's not like a moment where you're just like, I can't, believe this is happening, that's another example of that kind of thing happening. It's just, I can't put words into it other than to say it's incredibly humbling and gratifying, but it's also, I've met a pretty decent amount of ball players, and in person, they're all so nice and so friendly. Like Ryan Howard did not need to listen to me babble to him for, I say 20 seconds. It might have been 2 minutes. I try to keep it nice. He had no reason to do it, no need to do it, but he did. He laughed, he smiled, and he took a selfie with me, and I get that memory for the rest of my life. So it's amazing, and I'm blessed, and I'm thankful, and I don't take it for granted. I always got to make sure that I play it cool, right? You never want to be
Hmm.
that guy who's like, oh, I'm stammering around. You got to play it cool. So there's a lot that goes into it, but it's been just one of the coolest possible things to happen to a guy like me.
Act like you've been there. And you know what? You've been
Yes.
there a few times now.
Yeah. And it does make it easier, right? Doesn't make it any less interesting or humbling, but it definitely makes it a little easier to have those kind of conversations.
Well, Rich, we appreciate it. This has been kind of a big picture episode for everybody. I know throughout this road to release, we're sharing different elements, what's new, what's improved in Out of the Park 26, and you're a huge constant to this. So thank you for being a driving force for Out of the Park. I know a lot of people behind the scenes know how much of a force you are to keep this going and keep raising the bar. And I know it takes a team. And I know you would be the first to say you have a great team behind you. And
Yeah.
we just cannot wait for Out of the Park 26. Thank you so much for just being a part of our road to release.
Well, thank you. And I thank you for doing this, but also thank you individually. Thank you to all of our incredible streamer affiliates. A huge part of what makes us successful is our streamer affiliates who continually engage our fans. Thank you, obviously, to our fans. Thank you to Major League Baseball. Thank you to the Players Association. Thank you to Valve. Thank you to Fast Spring. Thank you to the MLB Alumni Association. Thank you to all the individual agents that we work with. It takes an extraordinary effort by the team, and it takes a lot with our partners. And I, I give so much credit to Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball Players Association. Like in the big picture, Out of the Park Baseball is a tiny little, just a tiny little part of the overall MLB video game landscape, much less the overall MLB landscape. And the league and the players treat us as great partners and treat us with as much respect and importance as they do anyone else, and that means everything. So all of these groups are needed to make this happen, and my job is just to make sure that all of these groups are happy with us and support us, and we do everything we can to make sure that it all comes together. So it's an incredible thing to be a part of, and I hope to be a part of it for many years to come.
All right. Cheers to that. And cheers to OTP 26.